I love our theme tune. Do you not just love the theme
It's
tune?
fantastic. Maria, how are you this week?
Well, I've just been dancing. I'm good. I've had my hair coloured. You didn't notice it earlier. Have you
I
noticed?
don't know. It's the little screen I'm looking at. Oh, it looks you're very glamour.
Um, Thank you. I feel younger. I've gone blonder, you see. So I've recaptured. I've also gone a bit blonde in terms of some of my decision making this week,
Oh,
which the
really?
team, the team will tell you. So I'm blaming the hair colour. What about you? What's good for you this week?
Well, yeah, I've had a little bit of a cut. You can't really tell because my hairstyle doesn't change that much. But yes, it's autumn here. I'm told we've just moved into September as we're recording this just now, and it's feeling a little bit autumnal. I'm feeling like the soup needs to start getting made again. It's that time of year, I think.
I've got the heating on. Don't tell my man. He doesn't watch this. It's okay. Right. So what's happening today then? Over
Well,
to
we
you.
have a phenomenal guest this week. Our guest this week is Steve Lowell, who has been on the live stage since the age of 6. That's over 53 years ago. For 30 years, he has been training and mentoring professional speakers around the world to craft and deliver the unique message in a way that positions them as the unmistakable authority in their field. He's the president of the Global Speakers Federation, past national president of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, CAPS, and a 2-time #1 international best-selling author. Steve Lowell, please welcome to Speaking Business TV.
Hi, guys. So glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited about what we're going to be doing today.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Beautiful background as well. I love your kind of blue sky thinking we'll hear about today.
Thank you. We just had that made, actually. This is only about the second or third time we're using it. We had one that was branded with our business, but we got this one so it's not branded, and we have it set up in my home studio in my house, which is really like, an extra bedroom in the basement, like many of us.
That shattered that illusion, didn't it? Because I thought he was standing in front of a real window there. So I must get my glasses redone. So, Steve, before we start, I would really love to understand, because obviously James has given away your age. He's shared how long you've been speaking. What does your speaking business look like at the moment? What is it made up of?
So my speaking business right now is made up of events. So I hold my own events, my wife and I together. We hold our own events virtually now. For the last 2 years, prior to COVID, we've been holding our own events live and holding them all over the world and traveling around the world. So we hold events with very specific focus, and then we bring our own audiences in, and then we generate revenue from that. And the other way we do it is we speak at other people's events, but these are not corporate or association events. And I do that work, and I have did it for years, but my business has sort of transformed a little bit. So we spend most of our time in front of audiences who are not corporate audiences and not necessarily association audiences. And normally they're thought leaders and they're entrepreneurs and they're experts in their field, but they're usually entrepreneurial type audiences. And we present certain content, and it drives business to us. And what's interesting is we've been able to figure out how to do that without all the hard sell and the irresistible offers, like, and all of those things, which is a gift to be able to do, but really stressful when you're not really sold on that kind of approach. So that's basically our business model now.
I like that. I like the fact that you don't do the hard sell. And I think if you've got something that genuinely helps people, I don't think you need to do the hard sell. Can you share with us what your expertise is, please, Steve?
Sure. So there's 2 different tracks, and one of them is I work with thought leaders and innovators who have a unique or complex idea, but they don't know how to speak about it. And you've probably heard folks do this where they try and explain what their concept is or their idea, and they get lost in the details, and your eyes glaze over and you go, well, that sounds cool, but I couldn't repeat it. So part of what I do is I work with those thought leaders and those innovators and help them craft a message and present a message that makes it, on a grade 7 level, so that their audiences and their stakeholders can not only understand the idea, but can now make a decision whether or not to buy or adopt the idea. So that's one big part of our business, is working with them. The other big part of our business is working with entrepreneurs, coaches, speakers, trainers, consultants, experts, service providers, and we help them develop what we call the perfect sales system. And it's about using speaking and adding speaking into their business model, and then using a very specific step-by-step process to go through the entire sales function, leading a prospect from attention all the way to a close. So we have that business model as well. And so I'll speak about that if it's an entrepreneurial model, and I'll speak about this other thing if it's a thought leader audience.
So I'm wondering then, on that second grouping, that are using stages in order to drive people into their service business, their other products that they have, they're using as a type of funnel, I guess, to bring people into their world to raise awareness. How have you been working with these people when we've seen that move from in-person stages to virtual stages? Has the model changed, or is it just really just a different type of format?
Yeah, it's a different type of format, and it was an interesting change for us, because when the pandemic hit, we had just come off of pretty much a world tour. We've been all over the world, and we had another one scheduled, and we have had lots of events planned for 2020. And of course, the pandemic hit, and then every one of those doors closed. I mean, it just full stop. And so we did the whole pivot thing very quickly, and we had to, because we didn't have an online business. We didn't really do a lot of, I've done these things and interviews and podcasts and those, but we didn't hold our own events virtually at all. So we had to learn very quickly how to make the shift over to the virtual platform, which we were able to do. And so the model itself hasn't really changed that much. It's just a function of now we do it this way rather than standing on a stage. And as you know, you've gone through the same thing. And as you know, there's pros and cons to that. But the model itself is pretty much exactly the same.
So with all these different models, I'd love to know, what are your guiding philosophies that have really taken you through your speaking career? Because it sounds like you've gone from the kind of corporate keynote speaking at those conferences to what we might think is more of a platform speaker. And they're quite different skill sets. They're very difficult. Very rarely do you find speakers are able to be comfortable in both of those places. So take us through your philosophy about how you think about speaking then.
Sure. So when I was doing a lot of corporate speaking and association speaking, I mean, I loved it. We as speakers, that's in our blood, as you well know. And there's no place we like more than being on stage in front of an audience. And doing the corporate and association work was great. And I loved every second of it. And what I found was, sometimes you go to an audience and they're all in, right? They're fully engaged, and they're excited, motivated, dedicated, committed, and all of those things. Sometimes you go to an audience and you can tell they're there because they've been told to be there, and they're not overly receptive as much. And so I always found that I got so much more myself, and I was able to deliver so much more value with those audiences who were all in. And so I stumbled across this process. I saw somebody speak at an event one time, and I was so impressed with this person. So, and this is years and years and years ago. This is 25 years ago. And I remember thinking to myself, that guy, it was a male speaker, that guy's having so much fun up there. I want to have that much fun. So I started slowly changing the business model. And the philosophy that I've sort of developed is this. Speaking in the world that I speak, speaking is not about a transference of information. Speaking is about two things. Speaking is about a transference of emotion first, which means if I can make you feel about my message the way I feel about my message, now we have a channel of communication. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, speaking is about an altering of perspective. So if I can use my content to change the way you think, change your perspective on something, to rattle your beliefs or shake your paradigms or have you look at the world differently in some way, then that's a big win. Now, we use information, of course, to do all that. And there is education and entertainment and all of those things that we're expected to do as speakers. But the philosophy that I've sort of adopted is, in my mind, when I'm preparing and when I'm delivering, I have to remind myself, this is not about a transference of information. Yes, I'm going to transfer information. Yes, I'm going to entertain. I'm going to do all of those things. But the two primary objectives for me are, number one is I want you to feel about my message the way I feel about my message. And number two is I want you to walk away thinking differently about your condition, thinking differently about your business or your life, or, I want to rattle a belief. I want to change something in you, because what I find is if you just take information and walk out the door with it, then it just kind of dissipates. And frankly, if I can't go beyond your intellect and into your imagination, I should just send you my PowerPoint slides and you can go to the bathroom and read it. You don't need me, right? So yeah. I got to reach past that intellect into your imagination, and I have to do those things. Change the way you feel, change the way you think. So that's been a sort of a guiding philosophy that has driven me through my business over the last 15 years or so.
So on that, in terms of those different styles, the very info, I mean, I'm thinking like almost like the ancient Greeks, logos, pathos, ethos, mm-hmm. With Aristotle, in terms of how you think about, so that you've got some audiences very much the rational way. So that maybe the informational style or kind of workshop style where you're putting a lot of I find a lot of those speakers really are talking in terms of frameworks or mm-hmm. concepts or yeah. things like that. The other style, which is the more transformational, transforming that audience, changing perspectives, I find that those audiences, those speakers use storytelling mm-hmm. more. So where have you come to on that? Like that blend between the storytelling and the kind of informational, educational framework. Where do you find yourself sitting now?
Right dead center. And so I love what you're talking about here, because all of the things that I do have a framework. I've got models, I got systems, I got frameworks that are all sort of my stuff, proprietary stuff, which I think is really important to have most of our content to be something that we created. So I've got lots of models, and whenever I speak, there's almost always a model or a framework involved in there. And what I found is that, you're correct. There are some people who are very motivated and get inspired by a change in the way they feel. But there are other people who get very motivated and inspired by the way if you change the way they think. And so it's the models that do that. It's the frameworks that change the way they think. And so what I'm finding is there are some people come up to me and they'll say things like, I got so motivated, I got so excited, I'm going to go and try that. And other people come up to me and say, I learned so much and you've changed the way I'm looking at my business and I'm going to try this. So it's kind of right down the center. When I speak, I always have a framework that I demonstrate, and I do it in a way that they can see that there's opportunity for change and they learn something new, but that's not enough in my judgment. They need to be excited about what they've learned.
Loving this. I am loving this. This is a masterclass of how to do it right. I'm going hallelujah, because everything you're saying is absolutely so spot on. I am feeling good. You've changed how I feel. You see, I was feeling very blonde and a bit dumb. Now I'm feeling good. Steve, tell me, I think we can probably pick up some of the answers here anyway, just by watching you in action. Talk to me about the characteristics that a professional speaker should possess, and we could probably talk about you, because I think you have those characteristics. But if you could tell us those, if you inform us, please.
Sure. So I'll tell you what I look for, and I think that this is a very personal thing, because you'll go to an event and you'll have a speaker on the stage, and you talk to one person, they'll tell you how awesome the speaker was. You talk to another person and they'll say, yeah, it wasn't really my cup of tea. So it's a very personal thing. But there's a number of things that I believe are really important for professional speakers at all levels. I think it's important for the seasoned pro who is, deep into the heart of their career, and important for those who are aspiring and just jumping into the fold. So, you know who Dr. John Molidor is, our good friend Dr. John from the US. He is the past national president of NSA and the immediate past president of the Global Speakers Federation. He's got these three philosophies that I really like. And he says a professional speaker should have expertise, eloquence, and ethics. And I like those three. I think those are fundamental, foundational. And if you don't have all three of those, you're going to struggle in the speaking business. But if we take those three and we make those the foundation, building upon that foundation, I think that there are some other really important skills and really important attributes that we need as speakers. Number one is, I believe we need to be infinitely curious. We need to be able to, what I call it, I say, pull profundity out of the mundane. And what that means is, we go through our lives and things happen to us every day, and there are stories there, there are lessons there, there's models there. And so we look around our world and we find the lessons and the magic and the profundity that's in these things that most people consider mundane events every single day. And so we build stories and we build lessons out of those things. So I think that is an important thing. We need to change the way we look at the world every single day and find things that can support our expertise and our philosophies and our positions and all those things. So that's one. Another one that I think is this, and we touched on it earlier, and that is, I believe that a speaker needs to have the ability to catalyze change, which means, just what we were talking about before, which means when I go see a speaker, what I really like is when that speaker makes me go like this, when I go, I've never heard it like that before. How can I use that? Like when there's that boom in my head that makes me reconsider whatever it is I think I know. And when a speaker can do that, I think that's the speaker that really gets recognized. That's the speaker that gets remembered. That's the speaker that gets called back. And of course, there's a whole bunch of things you don't want to do. You don't want to go overtime and all of those things. But I think these are two really important gifts for speakers. If we can pull profundity out of the mundane, then audiences love that. And if we can shift something in that audience, and if we can just make them look at their lives a little bit differently than they did a minute ago, that's very, very powerful as well. And then, the other thing I think is we obviously need to have the skills to deliver. And I don't subscribe to the theory that there's a right way and a wrong way to necessarily get on a stage and speak. If I was to say there's a right way and a wrong way, I would say the right way is whatever gets your message across the way you want it given across. And that works for you, then it's the right way. But when I get off the stage, what I ask myself is, did I give them something they've never seen before, and did I excite them about it?
I love all of this. This is a masterclass. I love that profundity out of the mundane. That's really good. And I also like those aha moments. Those aha moments when when I was running my speaker bureau, those speakers that made me go, oh, I hadn't heard it like that. Those were the ones that got the big fees.
100%.
Those were the ones that got paid the highest money. But they had to have all of the things that you said, that they had to be able to deliver it. They had to be eloquent. They had to, it's great. In fact, this is a masterclass, James, isn't it?
Yeah, actually talking about masterclass, something you just mentioned there reminds me of something I learned from not a professional speaker, but a professional author, Canadian, Malcolm Gladwell, great Canadian writer who wrote Outliers. And he has if you go to masterclass.com, he has an online course on storytelling. It's really, really good. Not just for authors, but for speakers. Lots of people can use it. And he mentioned something in there, which I think is almost is another layer that you can go to with what you just said about that, wanting to have a change happen to that person in the room. And I can't remember the phrase that he uses. I use it all the time, and I call it intellectual popcorn. So where you share a story where it's going to create a change or a perspective change in that audience member, but that it's got enough of a hook in it that on Monday morning when they're speaking to their colleagues, they're going to say, oh, I heard this guy Steve the other day and he said this thing I like, and it's kind of got a viral nature to it as well. And they're really hard to come up with because you've got to do a lot of thinking, like trying to find them. He's brilliant. Obviously, the 10,000 hour rule is probably an example. Like people would say, like 10,000, that gets repeated. And I think if you can do what you just mentioned there, that ability to create that change in that audience member, and then for them to almost be your viral, I know we're talking about viruses and stuff just now, into other people to create that change in them, that's really cool. But it's really hard.
Yeah. I want to talk about stories for a moment, because that concept comes up all the time, as you know. And I believe that telling stories from the platform, how can I put this? I believe that there is a misunderstood opportunity that a lot of speakers don't know about. And it's this. Telling stories is great. It's awesome. It does everything it's supposed to do, and you need to be able to do it, and we do it and that. But the question is, what stories do you tell? And what I found is the best stories that when I tell them that get me the best results are not my stories. They're your stories.
Yeah.
So when I can tell the audience's story from a perspective they have never considered before, that's the kind of story that I like to use. And I don't know if you've seen this model that I use. I've used it all over the world. It's called the Repumeter, and it measures, it helps people measure the state of their reputation. And that I can show it to you if you like. It's very cool. But what it does, it's a story, but it's your story. It's not my story. And so what I do with these stories, and I have lots of this, and what I do is I put the audience in their own story, and they kind of figure out where they land in their own story. And then they say, in their minds, they'll say, okay, this is my story. I recognize this story, and I'm in this spot in this story, and I need to be over in this other spot in the story. How do I change my story? So when I can tell the audience's story rather than somebody else's story, or in addition to somebody else's story, then it really has a profound impact. And that's something I don't see a lot of speakers do. And when I do see a speaker do it, I just go, there it is. Oh, that's beautiful. He just told me, or she just told me my story.
Yeah. And as a yes and to that, I think it was a speaker, another CSP speaker, I think it was Marilyn Sherman was the one that taught me about it, which I loved. And she started using it in books, and then she transferred it into her speeches, was when you're using stories, really try and have quite a breadth of stories in terms of the people whose stories those are. And he said, what's really interesting when you do that in a book, and someone's reading that book and they read a story, you're explaining a story, that reader is going, oh, I know someone just like that. I should get a copy of the book for her. And you said you can do the same thing in the speeches, and you can get super strategic about it as well if you really going to go that way. So you get like a mix of industries, levels. So someone either, as you say, they either identify themselves, or they identify a colleague or a friend or a loved one or someone like that, to say, oh, I heard the speaker the other day, Steve, and he told this story, and I thought just about you because it sounds like you as well. So that viral nature as well.
100%. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
Brilliant.
I'm intrigued. So you've led CAPS, the Canadian Professional Speakers. You're now leading up the Global Speakers Federation. So I'm sure this is one of the questions you get most often, but I'm going to ask you anyway because I think it's like your expertise. What advice would you give to those aspiring speakers who are just getting on that first rung, just getting started, to help them grow their business? Because I'm very conscious that those speakers that are coming in now, you and I, we grew our business initially pre-COVID or before COVID.
Yep.
And they're going to be growing their businesses PC or post-COVID, after COVID. So what advice would you give to those aspiring speakers listening to this now or watching this just now in 2021?
So you know as well as I do that we could go all day about giving advice to aspiring speakers. So I'm going to condense it to what I think is, if somebody asked me, what is the one piece right now? I think it would be this. It would be recognize the enormity of the opportunity that lies before you through the virtual world. And so let me explain that. It used to be not so long ago that if you went to a convention or a conference and they piped in a speaker through video, it was accepted, but there's always a little, well, he was only there by video. Like there was always a little check mark above it, right? But what we found is, and Maria, I'm sure you have noticed this, or you can debate this if I'm off. But what I've found is that not only is the virtual delivery more expected and accepted, in many cases it's preferred now. So here's what that means. It means that I'm at my place in Ottawa, Canada. You guys are at your place over in the UK, and we're here. I speak all over the planet now. I'm going to be in like 16 countries over the next month, and I'm not going to have to leave my house. So there's an enormous amount of opportunity here. And the way that we leverage that opportunity is through connection equity. So it used to be 2 years ago or 3 years ago, if you'd asked me what my main advice would be, it would be more along the lines of being ready to hit the stage. And when you hit the stage, make sure you rock the stage and all of that. And all of that exists. It's still there. It hasn't gone away. But I think if you really want to make an impact in this world as a speaker starting now, you need to be able to deliver virtually at the same level as a professional speaker on a platform, but understand the magnitude of the opportunity that lies before you and start leveraging the connection equity. And the way to leverage the connection equity is through the speaker associations. That's why I'm so passionate about being the president of the Global Speakers Federation, because the Global Speakers Federation, through my association with CAPS in Canada, through CAPS through the GSF, the connection equity has created not just a global business for Jane and I, but we have established lifelong friendships and relationships that will be with us forever because of this. And of course, that expands our business. So I would say, find your local speaker association wherever it is. If you don't have one in your country or in your area, then there's a virtual one, the Virtual Speakers Association International. Find an association to get involved with and start learning from those people, start growing with those people, start sharing with those people, belong to that association and leverage the connection equity that's before you, because it has never had this measure of opportunity.
Love that. May I respond, James, to one of the points that Steve made about the virtual piece? Is that okay? Can I put my 2 pence worth in?
Go for it.
Go for it. I totally agree. I haven't disagreed with you yet. It's like you've paid me, but you haven't. So we found through COVID, first of all, there was definite resistance to the whole virtual thing. But I know of clients who would previously run one event, maybe 2 events a year, now doing 40 or 50 events because it's so easy. Very short lead times and involving all of their company employees globally now. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop doing that. They will, I'm sure, have the in-person. We're all desperate to get out and do something and meet people. Absolutely, that networking is invaluable. But the virtual is not going away. So you are totally right. Vikram Bal is listening in and he says, interesting. We have another Facebook user saying hello. I'm sure they all agree too. I think you're absolutely right. Sorry, James, carry on.
No, I was just as you were saying it, and I was thinking about earlier this morning about what kind of events, in-person events, are we going to see in the future? Because I definitely don't subscribe, and I know you don't subscribe to this either, that it's all going to be virtual. That's not where we're going. So we're going to see this blend, this hybrid type of thing. And so I've been thinking about it, and like you were saying, Maria, I think for a lot of the events I used to do a lot, which was internal global event for a company. So they bring all their top executives from all around the world together into one space or in one region. I think those are unlikely to go back to the way that they were in person. They'll use much more virtual for those. I think anything that's client facing, I think there will be more of those ones happening in person again. And I also think there's an opportunity here because at first when I started seeing this, I thought, well, why would anyone want to book those speakers that do the side rooms at conferences, the more kind of workshop style? What's the point in doing that when you could do it virtually? My thinking has changed a little bit, though. I think what we might see is those speakers who are very good at the kind of seminar workshop side internally in organizations, rather than all those employees going to a conference and then doing those side rooms, that great speaker trainer going to that organization and more regionally, and they'll bring their workers together regionally in that space. Because I'm hearing just time after time after time, there's a real yearning just now for collaboration with people. But I don't necessarily think the big, large conferences is going to be the way that's going to work. So I think it's kind of nuanced, but who knows? It could change completely in 6 months' time.
Yeah, I agree with this. And this is what I'm hearing as well. The hybrid direction is what seems to be prominently in the minds of people. And I like it. But, I'll tell you, as a speaker, if I'm given the choice to be here in my studio at home or being on a stage in Singapore, I'm in Singapore, right? I mean, I would give this up for any live stage in the world because I just love being on the stage. But if it's just not practical, it's great to know that this is an acceptable way to do it now.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
And I think this maybe go for some of the people that are attending and watching this just now. thinking of what is your intention to speaking. And so I'm with you, Steve. I think this is the best job in the world because we get to travel and we go to amazing places and connect with new audiences and learn about new cultures. And it's fantastic. I love this part of it. And so I'd be on that flight with you in Singapore. Go to Singapore.
I'm staying in my office. I love the virtual. I love it.
But to be fair, I was having a conversation with a number of speakers the other day who were saying for them, the biggest reason, their intention on speaking is to get a message out, to create that transformation, to get a message out, and the traveling bit, all that stuff's secondary, really. So for them, they're feeling really empowered just now because they feel like you were saying, Steve, we now have this global audience, much easier to get to. So if you just take it from the perspective of it's your topic, your that thing that is your core, and the delivery device is almost irrelevant, then there's a completely different way of looking at it. So I think this is great. This is the amazing thing about industry. You can come at it from all different perspectives and have different intentions to what to do it. And it's very welcoming for everyone. So Steve, I'm sure there'll be lots of people watching this just now, listening to it, saying, okay, I want to connect with Steve. I want to find out a little bit more, and also maybe get some directions on you if they're not a member of a speakers association, because you're now the president of the Global Speakers Federation, which is the kind of, I guess it's like the mothership of all the
it's the big one. It's the top. It's the top one. It's the big one.
So where's the best place for them to go to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is really on LinkedIn. And I mean, I have a Facebook page, stevelowell.com, or a website, stevelowell.com. It's a very basic sort of a business card website by design. But the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn Lives a couple times a week. I'm doing one shortly after this call with you guys. I post things up there, and I connect very well with folks on LinkedIn. So that's the best way to go. The other thing is this: if folks really want to talk to me, I'm going to spend some time with if you want to. And the way you do that is just go to meetstevelowell.com. www.meetstevelowell.com. That's my calendar link. Go in there and book a call with me, and I'll spend 30 minutes with you and chat about the speaking business. And when you book the call, just make sure and mention this show and give me a little idea of what you want to speak about. And I go through those and accept most of them and don't accept all of them. But you can do that, and because I'm happy to speak with speakers around the world. It's part of my passion to give to this community. That's why I jumped through all the hoops to become the president of the GSF, so that I could have some sort of a positive influence on our speakers community. So connect with me on LinkedIn or book a call with me on the calendar link.
Well, that's very kind.
Very generous.
It's the Canadian in you, Steve, being so giving like that. I guess my wife's Canadian, so I find Canadians very, very giving. Now, one other very giving thing that you're doing, and Maria is very excited about this.
I'm really excited. I want this. I want this.
So you've kindly offered a special offer for anyone that would like it. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, it's called the High Impact Keynote Template. And it's a framework for a keynote style address that I developed many years ago over a period of years. And now it's not the right way to create a keynote. It's a way that works. And so it's a PDF. I'll get this to you, and I'll just sort of fan through it. Like, it's all fill in the blanks kind of stuff, and it follows a very specific format. Very, very, very powerful. So to get that, connect with me on LinkedIn and just say, I'd like a copy of the template, and one of my team members will reach out to you and get it to you. So it's just a fill in the blanks thing. Is beautiful, but it's accompanied by a training video. And to get the training video, then you join our private Facebook group, and the training video is in there. But even just with the template, just with the document, you'll be able to create a very good keynote address. And when I teach this to groups, my mission is to get their entire keynote down to 2 minutes. And so to do that, I mean, it's hard, man. So to do that, we put almost everything in the message in a single sentence, get it down to 2 minutes, and now you have forensically dissected your message to the point where you've got the skeleton, and now you can start adding in all the other stuff to make it bigger. But if you can express your entire keynote message in 2 minutes, now you know that you have gone through forensically and you have only the most important words in there. And that's what this helps you to do.
I like that, because I think most speakers give too much in their keynotes. So if you can get it down forensically and really deliver that strong, I like that. I'll see you all in the Facebook group, because I'm going after this. I'm straight there. I am going to be there first in the queue. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for sharing your tip, which is obviously to become part of an association, Speakers Association. I too have a tool of the week, because James and I love gadgets and software. And the tool that I have to share is, if any of you are out there creating a podcast, and what you may know is that we take this content as well that we do on Speaking Business TV and we turn it into a podcast. Now, creating podcasts can be a bit expensive when you're having to have a professional editor and having to have, mastering the audio and getting it right. And there's lots of, you've got to add the music at the beginning and add the music at the end if you want to do it right. And we were advised to try a piece of software by our podcast producer, because he was retiring, and he kindly said, I have the solution. And it's brilliant. It's called Alitu, A-L-I-T-U. We will have a link on the Speaking Business TV website. And it's podcast editing software that makes it absolutely easy. And I can see that Steve is writing it down. It costs you $32 a month. I mean, how cool is that? You're doing a podcast a week. It's nothing, right?
So Maria, we're going to have to maybe have a little bit of a contest. Maybe what we should do is we should take one of these episodes, and I'll have my human editor in the Philippines. We'll set the start. He'll start editing, doing his human version, and then you can use Alitu to do your fancy virtual version. See who finishes first. Maybe that could be a future contest. I think a little speed
Let's do
test.
that. Let's just get them to time it. We'll do the same. Of course, I won't be using the software. It'll be Sean. But yes, we can do that. We can absolutely do that. Brilliant.
Great. So we're going to have all the links we've been speaking about today. The ones from Steve, the ones from Maria there. You can find them all. Just go to speakingbusiness.tv and just enter your details there. Speakingbusiness.tv. And it has all of the show notes for this episode, as well as all the previous episodes that we've had as well, and all their great tools and gadgets and things. So just head over to speakingbusiness.tv if you want to find out more about that. So Steve, thank you so much for joining Maria and I today on the show.
Well, I got to tell you, I have to congratulate you, both of you, on the work that you're doing, because the value that you are delivering to our speaker community is just off the charts. And James, I love you. I love your work. We've done some things together before. And Maria, I'm just getting to know you. But I have to tell you, I love the work that you're doing. I love being involved in it. And thank you for having me on, because it's a real privilege to be here with you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure. And I think everybody's learned so much. We've had some wonderful comments saying how fantastic the content has been. And that's down to you, Steve. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you.
So do we have some little music to head out today?
Yeah, this is it. The closing music.
See you next week, everyone. Take care.